Have you ever tried making massive changes in your life? You tried a new exercise program or a new savings program, or maybe you decided that you're going to become an early riser, like all the latest videos about success say you should be up by 5 in the morning and working hard, have an hour of time all by yourself, and great ideas, right? How's that gone for you? Have you actually succeeded at doing any of them? Now, when it comes to massive changes, I'm an advocate of massive changes. I think massive changes are a great thing to do. And in fact, I've done some instant massive changes in my life. I remember years ago when everything that I was eating was disagreeing with me, and I was down to 126 pounds, something like that. I had bruises up and down my back. My knees knocked together when I tried to sleep, so I slept with a pillow between my knees. I always had abdominal pain. I was a mess. And then I read a book by, what was her name? Goodall. I can't remember her first name. Called Breaking the Vicious Cycle. And it was a long weekend. I got the book and I was in bed because I was in pain. And that night I read the book and I started the diet Saturday morning. And by Monday I was out of bed and could walk uncomfortably up a kilometer long trail that I went with my kids and my wife. And suddenly I had my life back again. Now, I was not out of pain. I had lots of pain still. I was still uncomfortable, but I knew that this new diet that I'd started had changed my life. And so I never went back. And the reason I never went back is because the rewards were instant. I started the diet Saturday morning. Monday morning I felt so much better that I could actually go for a hike. And I was slow and I was still in pain, but I could do it. And that, to me, was the reward that I didn't need to worry about going back to the old way of eating, because I was feeling better. I was on the upswing. I was angling up. And in that case, I was angling up quite quickly. At the beginning, anyway. It took me a full 6 years or so to completely recover. But the point is that I changed enough to realize that I wasn't going to eat that crap that I was eating before because it hurt to do so. So, when we start talking about massive changes, then that's great, right? What can you do what massive change can you make that you're going to have the reward right away? Well, not very many, right? Very few changes like that. When you start talking about massive changes, you're thinking big financial goals or health programs, like you're going to get stronger, you're going to be able to be fit and healthy, or you're going to suddenly get up at 4:30 in the morning and get to work and have all this great work time before you go to your normal work, and you're going to become so super successful. And doesn't happen because the reward for those activities is so far in the future that your brain just discounts it. And it's too much of a change all at once. Your brain resists it. So not only does it not want to do it because it's not motivated, but it actually physically resists the change. So what do? How do you move the reward up to the action you're doing so you can have that kind of change? Well, the wonderful thing is the reward is there. The problem is that when you're trying to make massive changes, it's too big of a reward. So instead, what you want to do is you want to make little tiny changes. It's the 1% habits that you need to make on a weekly basis, daily basis, then develop those little habits that have an intrinsic reward built right into them, so that once it becomes a habit, then you're on your way. You don't have to worry about it anymore. So we talked about 1% habits. I'll run through them, what 1% habit is in my perspective. It's small enough to be able to accomplish the action in less than a minute. So 1 push-up, brushing the bottom part of your teeth, you know, putting a little bit of money in a savings jar, putting your receipts, saving your receipts, and then putting them in envelopes when you get home. Things that take 1 minute, that's what you want. It's got to be short enough that your brain doesn't complain. It doesn't say, oh, why am I doing all this work? It's just, you know, it's just short, small, no real effort. You know how to do it. You don't need to learn. You just, that's the habit. So small habit has an intrinsic reward built right into it. We talked about that just a second ago. If you do the action and get the reward because you did the action, that's what you want. You do 1 push-up, you feel proud about yourself, and you can actually, if you can actually feel it in your shoulders or wherever it is, your chest, after you're doing your push-up, after you finish your push-up routine, that's the reward. I can tell I'm getting stronger because my chest is sore and tired, right? That type of reward will help you to continue doing the habit. It has to be built right in. Don't concoct something. Oh, you're such a great guy for doing 10 push-ups. No, you're not. Don't be stupid. Anybody can do 10 push-ups with a little bit of effort, right? And you might have to start doing them against the wall or start doing them, doing knee push-ups, but eventually you can get to 10 push-ups. I say anybody, meaning majority of people, right? All right, so, and then it is a action that is part of a bigger plan. I mean, if your goal is to do 1 push-up forever, then you're not going to continue doing 1 push-up. I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen. You're not going to be motivated to do it. Saving $1 a day, we talked about that a couple of videos ago, that's the same thing. You're not going to do it. You just get bored with it. Your brain just, you're not going to do it. But if it's part of a bigger plan, I'm going to do 1 push-up a day, and then next week I'm going to do 2 push-ups a day, and then the next week I'm going to do 3 push-ups a day, and then I'm going to start doing some other exercises, and suddenly you have a goal, a bigger goal that's part of those little tiny increments, and your brain stays motivated because it sees progress. And the action actually has to make a difference. That's why it's a 1% habit. Should make a 1% difference in your life. Some way, somehow. 1 push-up could make a 1% difference in your life. If you're not doing any exercise at all, 1 push-up is a 1% improvement. If you're not saving any money at all, saving $1 a day is an improvement. It's a 1% improvement. You can actually see the dollars adding up in your little jar that you're putting it in. That type of thing. Any kind of improvement that you can see a difference. All right, so now the nice thing about these 1% habits is it brings the reward right up front because you can see the reward as soon as you've done the action. It might be small, but so is the action. If the action is small, then the reward can be small. You don't need a big reward to do a tiny action. And in fact, if you get a big reward for doing a tiny action, you end up developing an addiction, which you don't really want. You don't want to be addicted to doing something. You want to have the habit, so when the cue shows up, you do the habit. You don't concoct cues and keep on working on trying to do the habit without having any real reason to do it. So, it's tiny action, tiny reward. They should match. And if your reward is small, then you can keep on moving it forward, right? You have a small reward, then you do a little bit more, your reward gets a little bit bigger because you're doing a little bit more. You keep moving forward with that, and eventually you get to the point where you're moving radically up. You're doing that massive change because of the effects of the tiny habits you developed.